partnership.
Right.
So yeah, we just heard like so many counties are like not using the incentives and things like that. Can you give us any tips on like what to say while they are at their ELCs or whoever fund them? Like what can we do?
Well, we saw a really huge infusion when we had ARPA. So those kind of infusions are great, but they tend to be almost a bait and switch at times if we don't have a sustainable system for them. And so kind of where we've had our head is how do we create a sustainable structure to build that on top of it so that it stays and we have a mechanism for it and it lives as a system. So we, believe it or not, we actually have worked for the last few years to do that with Teach. When we first started working on this, that was like one of our dreams is like, how do we make sure that Teach is non-negotiable for the system? This isn't something that we just, it's nice to fund, like Teach has to be here to be able to sustain the infrastructure. And just sidebar, Teach, our turnover rate is down to 4%.
Wow.
Y'all, 4% in a 30 to 40% turnover rate. So out of over 7,000 scholars-ish, somewhere around 7,000, we had a 4% turnover rate. So we finally have that down and nobody questions Teach. Like, I don't know if you saw the budgets, the first round that came out, the 20 million for Teach is sitting there. Like, it was one of the first things. So incentives is how we sustain that. So once we get them in, get them excited, the contracts and the commitment hold them, but then when that ends, we need incentives to keep them in. And so what we're trying to do now is get this center through, which I know a lot of you have been a part of talking through, but this Early Childhood Professional Recognition Center is rolling through right now. We've got McFarland's last committee got agenda that's also has your pieces of legislation in them. There's a little bit of fighting around that after school language, which we can kind of go around in a circle about, but that is moving on both sides. So if that goes through, we would then get the established center, which then gives us the ability to truly have a really great workforce registry, a really great professional development infrastructure that everyone can navigate. And you're not like, oh, I'm a school readiness provider, so if I go over this, I've got to have this credential, and then, oh, but VPK, I also have to these trainings, and I need all of that nonsense that we have in the field. The hope is that the center will make that organized, and then once we have that organized, have true data, then we can do cost estimates to say, here's what a compensation strategy would look like statewide. And right now we're guessing. Kiki's team does amazing guessing, though they're usually really spot on their data. But even that has limitations. So our like kind of holding our breath when incentives started pulling back with ARPA was, okay, how do we set up a structure that then incentives works on top of, that becomes another part of the system. But we can't do that until we truly know what our workforce looks like, where they are, what kinds of credentialing they have, what kinds of degrees they have, because we can't estimate that cost without that data. So Kiki's team has been kind of cross-training and going between Teach and incentives and then really killing it on the incentives counties, which is great. But when we dream together, they have all these thoughts in their head about, okay, once we get that data, how do we start immediately pumping out those cost estimates, finding funding structures for it. And the problem too with CCDF being so limited, which has been the main funding source for this, we've got to figure out a place to get the chamber involved to have business investment. So then the businesses could then push it into the center to say, we're having a hard time with our workforce, we can't find people to hire. And we say, oh, well, it's because you have all young families. We'll get them into Teach, we'll match your funding with Teach, get them credentialed as long as you pump in the compensation strategy on top. But we have to be able to show them that. And so it was a lot of words to say. Teach finally got rooted in pretty deep at 20 million. Now we have this project with the center coming next, and then once that gets really deep and rooted in, Kiki's getting tagged in to do the data things on how do we get the compensation on top of that. So super long answer to, we hope it's coming, and we're posturing for it. We just have to do it in the baby steps to make sure it happens with correct data, correct estimates, and intentionality.
I had one